Good morning, folks there, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. My name is Ray Blevins. This is my co-host, Joe Zamecki. And this morning's guest will be John Koontz.
Right.
First off, I'd like to welcome you and point out that this is a call-in show. That's our number right there. And we're here to discuss any topics that you might think you'd like to ask an atheist. If you've always been dying to ask an atheist a question there, the number's right across there, 472-2255. Give it a try. Hang in there. We've been having problems with the phones, but we'll definitely give it a try. Like I say, this is the Atheist Community of Austin. To further introduce ourselves, we have a web page, and we'll stick that out there. Go ahead, John.
Hold that for you.
Can you
zoom in on that?
Never mind. That's not working too well.
Well, let's zoom in on it.
Okay.
Go ahead and zoom
Can you
in
zoom?
on that.
Or switch cameras. Oh, there. Never mind.
Let's just read it. Go ahead and read that out loud there.
It's www.atheist-community.org. Our voicemail number is 371-2911. Just in case there's something that's said today on the show that you'd like to make a comment, or if you'd like to know any more about the Atheist Community of Austin. We meet every Sunday mornings at the Hot Jumble Bakery down on South 5th. I don't know why I keep calling it South 5th.
No, it's not
West
South 5th.
5th.
It's West 5th. 5th in San Antonio.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. One of the things the Atheist Community of Austin has been started this year is our lecture series. We're doing a monthly lecture series, and last month went real well, didn't you say, Joe? We had a great turnout, and John was there too. And and the interesting thing about that is John's going to be our guest speaker March 1st at Furs at North Cross Mall. This will be 11 o'clock, and it's open to the public. There's no charge. It's free, and I just wanted to let everybody know that. And so this morning I thought we'd discuss a little bit possibly about what you're going to be discussing. You teach evolution. Well, actually, you teach science.
Right.
And part of that involves teaching evolution.
That's right. I teach 8th grade science, and we have a long section in there about evolution. Over the years, I've developed a long unit on teaching evolution, and what I'm going to try to do in the lecture series on the 1st of March is explain a little bit about how important evolution is in science and how it can be taught effectively, even though there may be some opposition out there with some of the parents and some of the students and even within the school system itself. But it can still be taught very effectively, and that's what I'm going to try to discuss, hopefully to encourage other atheists to help with that, to make sure that evolution is being taught in school. It is one of the most important ideas in modern science, and it's a thread that runs throughout science, and it needs to be covered if children are to actually get a decent science education. Very important concept.
Yes, and not to use the word out any other teachers there at your school, but is there other atheist teachers that you can talk to and help you out with this? Or
there is at least one other, and there are many other teachers that are, even if they're not atheists, they're fairly open to the reality that there are atheists out there, and there are teachers that are not atheists that still manage to teach an evolution unit and do a fairly good job at it.
Excuse me. You said 8th grade. Do you find these kids pretty receptive to the idea, or because it doesn't seem to me that they would be locked into a really one strong viewpoint still at that point in their life?
Actually, a lot of them are pretty
really?
much locked into a very, very strong viewpoint. For instance, every year, a question that I'll get at least several times is about the end of the world.
There's
a significant number of kids that will ask me about the end of the world, and they're actually very concerned that within their lifetime, within a few years, when we come up on the year 2000 or 2001, however you want to count it, that's it. Bang, they're gone. That's the time of the second coming and the rapture, and they're going to be dead, and the world's going to end, or there's going to be a war. There's several different versions of it I hear. But, I have over 100 kids, and every year I'll have 2, 3, 4 kids ask that question independently. And so that's what maybe 3 or 4% of the student population is actually concerned about that.
My own personal fears on that is it's going to be some religious nut that actually
that's
be a martyr and take
we may
millions with him.
We may be forcing the situation to come about because the various religions, Catholic Church, and for instance, and their stand against birth control and sex education. We're experiencing a massive population explosion on the planet. We have been for years. Of course, it's an exponential growth. It's a matter of too many people, not enough resources, not enough food.
Exactly.
And so in a sense, yes, religion, I think, very likely will bring about some sort of conditions where we have a war over limited resources, and I think we're starting to see that around the world already. And for instance, in Iraq and Iran and these places, there's plenty of religious nuts out there that are adding to the problem rather than helping it. And of course, our own people right here in America, with their constant resentment for education as far as sex education and birth control and all that, they're just adding fuel to the fire.
Yes, we brought up an excellent point about the millennium. What most people don't realize is we had no 0 years, so actually the century doesn't start until 2001. Actually, it should be 2001.
Right.
And we're counting centuries, not years.
Yeah.
And but this will actually be the first millennium. There was all kinds of gloom and doom predicted.
Right.
But the interesting thing about this particular millennium is we're all using the same calendar.
Right.
At that point, there was actually several different interpretations of exactly when the millennium was. But this time, the whole entire Earth is basically using the same calendar.
That's true.
And so there, other than that, there's really not much significance to it. It's a number assigned by man.
That's right.
And
we can take a caller.
Oh, we are actually going to try a caller.
Well, we have a question from one, and that means we should probably try to take it at least, right? Take the caller.
No, I guess
we're just going to have to read the question out loud and then answer.
Okay,
That
sorry,
sounds
folks. Because of the phone problems here, the questions will be relayed to us.
Right.
And we have a caller named Eddie that said his question was, if you don't believe in God, what do you believe in? So we'll just take turns answering questions.
I'll take a shot at that one.
Go ahead, John.
I would answer that I don't believe in anything. I don't even like using the word believe, and I'll try to avoid it whenever possible, because to me, believe, that means to accept something without any evidence or even in spite of the evidence. And I try to look for I try to make decisions and try to figure out what to think based upon analyzing evidence, analyzing the thinking behind whatever the proposition is. And so I don't really even like using the word believe. What I accept is material reality around me, that the Earth is billions of years old, that the life on it has evolved for billions of years, that in a sense everybody on the planet is related, that every living thing on the planet is related, that we have a short period of time to live, and that we have to use our reason and our minds to solve our problems, to alleviate human suffering, and to try to make the best of what we've got, and realize that in the end we're all going to die. But hey, before we die, let's try to make our life as meaningful and as possible, with life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody.
Excellent point there. And if Kellen's ready, let's switch over to Joe and let's get Joe's point of view in this.
Atheists typically do not like the word belief or faith. There's some serious connotations there that a lot of believers, so to speak, do not appreciate right off the bat the way an atheist does. Acceptance without any evidence or proof. To an atheist or a realist or a skeptic, this concept and this way of thinking is flawed for many reasons, but is basically worthless. When you're trying to find out the real answers to the real hard questions without the emotional baggage or without the bias or without the evil intent of some people when you're talking about something that can't be proven. I mean, a lot of people over the years have used that concept and the absolute acceptance of many people in these ideas to corrupt and to cause havoc in humanity. And atheists who know the history of the world, basically most of them will have no need for acceptance without proof. So when we're faced with a question, a tough one about life or about origins of things, science has consistently come up with the best theories when we couldn't come up with proof. But when proof was available and evidence and all that, science came along. Science, instead of religion, found the realities and the truths of many answers to questions which had boggled mankind. And many people who were religious or did not know much about science would accept religion's explanation. And time again, science has disproved and changed the attitude of people over the world about very basic things. The shape of the earth, a very obvious example. Religion was heavily against that concept that the earth is round. When science basically proved it very, very consistently, very easily, then religion had a real tough time, and a lot of people suffered because of their past dogmas associated with churches. Anyway.
Excellent. And just to remind our callers, we're all kinds of technical difficulties. We don't have our graphics, that's why the number's out there. Again, my name is Ray Blevins. This is Joe Zamecki. Our guest is John Koontz. You're not going to be live on the air this morning. Usually you would be live on the air, but you call. Our call screener will gladly take your questions and pass them along to us, and we'll answer them on the air. I hope that answered your question there, Eddie. I hope you're still listening. I see other callers. We don't.
Any other questions?
That's so. Let's go back to what we was talking. We brought up several different things there during all that. It reminded me of the one quote, and I think I can't remember the gentleman's name, where he's saying believing was so much easier than thinking, so that's why we have so many more believers than thinkers. Who's
I'm not sure, but it's darn true, I tell you.
I love that
It's so
quote.
easy to believe something without having to go out and prove it, and it's much more difficult to find that proof.
And it makes you much more comfortable to believe things. It's a lot easier to believe things. It makes you feel more comfortable if you think that when you die you're going to go to some kind of heaven and you're going to see your dog and your mother and your dad and all your brothers and sisters and friends and all the people that you knew while you were alive. That's a very comforting thought. And so, it's not really surprising that so many people want that to be true. But wanting things to be true doesn't mean that they are. One of the things that I hear often as an atheist is I kind of get an impression from people that because I don't think there's any life after death and there's no heaven or hell, that somehow, I think it's just fine that people just go ahead and die and then they rot. That's it. And it's not a good or bad thing. It's just reality. You have to learn to deal with that reality, that's what happens. And it's not that I want people to die and never see them again. It's just reality. And so sometimes Christians especially will take that to mean that I want people to go ahead and hurry up and die quickly so that they can be gone. I don't know. There's some odd things you get. It's kind of a negative response you get when I say that no, I don't believe in any life after death, as if I wouldn't want there to be a chance for people to have some happiness, but it had to make it so.
Yes.
I actually seen one of the other shows there. The gentleman was saying that he thought an atheist was someone that didn't want to humble himself by kneeling down in front of God. And to me, it seems that it's more humbling when you stop and think what a little teeny, insignificant little speck we are here in the universe. And that, if worst case scenario, if we actually, if somebody did blow up this Earth, I don't think it'd have any effect on the universe.
It wouldn't. And in fact, if you look out at the Big Dipper constellation in the northern, towards the north, there's basically a big box of stars, and within that space, the 4 stars that make up the bulk of the Big Dipper, there are 1 million galaxies, and each one of those galaxies contains countless stars, millions and millions and billions of stars. And that's just one small portion of the sky.
Yeah.
And that goes on for 11 billion light years in all directions. That's the visible universe. And so if you talk about being, humbled by reality. I think it's the Christians that think that a God talks to them, and I know several that actually think they get messages from a God, that actually think they hear things, and then they would go ahead and say that they're more humble than we are when we look at the reality of the universe and realize how insignificant we are in the big picture of things. It's a little bit hard to imagine how.
I think a lot of it has to do with their own vanity, wanting to place human being, not their particular self, but humans in general, that this was all made just for them, and to me, it feels like that's led to a lot of the problems that we now have, because they feel, that this is here to do with what they want. We're actually part of the whole system, and we need to be working within the system. Yes,
that's right.
And let me remind you, call again. That feel free to call in this morning. We are having problems. I've seen the phones going light up a couple times, and we've had technicians running in and out here. While we're, like I say, this is live television. You never can tell what's going to happen here.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes. And
hey, here's an idea. Maybe we could have the Christians who are watching pray for the sound to come back.
There we go.
We're doing a scientific experiment on that and see whether or not maybe that'll have any kind of effect at all in the situation. I suspect
we have.
Kellen wanted me to just tell you this. We had a caller named JD who changed his mind because of seeing y'all. He associated in the past evil with atheism. He no longer does after.
Let's repeat that because.
And he was wondering about what reaction you get in the public when you tell people that you're an atheist.
Okay, let's repeat that because the callers.
Let's do that. Let's repeat that.
Let's make sure the word came in through my floor manager there, Don Rhodes. There, thanks for your help this morning. And we had a caller, JD, I think he said his name was, said he was real impressed with the call. Go ahead.
With the show.
Yeah, I'm totally spaced out.
Well, said he changed his mind.
Oh, yeah, he thought atheism was an evil.
Atheism equated with evil, so when watching us and seeing that we're not intrinsically evil on TV, and I don't know if anybody who is evil would want to give that away on TV, but we're still good people anyway.
Yes. And then the other question was what kind of response we get in public when we profess our atheism. Trying to think of a good way of putting that there. Go ahead, John.
I'd like to say something about that. I think one of the problems with the JDs, the world out there, who, for the previous JD, I guess we'd want to say, is that there's so little information out there about atheists and atheism. If you try to go to a public library and get some books on atheism just to learn about it, you're going to be hard put to find very much. And certainly in a school library, you're not going to find anything. And so the myth that atheists are bad people that are, out to kill babies or whatever it is that we're supposedly doing, sacrificing goats, whatever it is. I've heard a number of these different bizarre things.
Yes.
Well, there's not much out there to dispel those myths. And that's one of the reasons that we want to try to do this show, and we have our organization. That's one of the reasons why we're doing our lecture series, and we have a website and a newsletter, is to get the word out there and to dispel some of the myths that there are about atheists, so that maybe some people will realize that we're not evil, we're not the problem in the world. In fact, very often it's atheists who are right there, dead center, and working for solutions to problems.
Yes.
So.
And we got I see a bunch of lights going there, and I really appreciate you guys trying. So keep trying to call in. We will try to get your questions to us there. Joe, you had a point there you was going to make?
Well, I actually had a question. I wanted to go back to something we were talking about earlier about your students. It's a public high school?
Junior high.
Junior high, I'm sorry. Public junior high, and you said that a lot of students are very solid in their creationist background ideas and indoctrination, I guess, and they take it to school with them, of course. Right. And they have a problem with evolution being taught there sometimes. Is that the case, or do you, when they talk about, you said they talk about creationism and as if it were fact, and then you have to reconcile that with your education of them in a science classroom in a public school, and inevitably evolution is going to get in there because it's such an intrinsic part of science. Well, when you tell them about evolution, what kind of reaction do you get out of some of the more hardcore ones in junior high? I suppose it can be more than what people think, I guess.
Right, it is. First of all, junior high kids are a lot more intelligent than most people give them credit for. And they're also, the number of them, like I've said, have been pretty well brainwashed at the same time. Sometimes the reaction is pretty negative. But the way to handle the evolution unit is to do it in the most upfront and relaxed manner possible. And you want to be real forthright about the information and without watering any of it down. But at the same time, you want to recognize the fact that some of them are going to have a problem with it, and it's really not their fault they have a problem with it. They've been taught since, the first books they were read to were probably, the children's Bible and things like that. So the thing is to try to make them relaxed and make them feel pretty comfortable about that. One of the things I do is I give them a lot of extra credit for asking questions, and so some of the creationist kids I have actually come out of the evolution unit with an average up close to 100, and a lot of times it's because the extra credit questions that I let them ask. I encourage them to question everything I say. My hope is that maybe that kind of skeptical, critical thinking, that type of scientific thinking, will become a lifelong habit, and they actually enjoy the class when they realize that they're not going to be put down for their beliefs. I'm not going to insult them. I'm not going to make them feel bad. I'm going to try to encourage them to make them feel comfortable to speak their mind and say whatever they'd like to say. And I find that smooths it over.
Yeah, you actually encourage them to try to stump you.
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
Try to find fault.
Exactly. The more questions they can ask, if they can try to put me on the spot, I love it if they try to put me on the spot, because that's what science is. And that's much more important than learning just a bunch of facts and figures. It's much more important to learn how to question and how to use your brain to try to pick apart the other guy's argument and see through what he's trying to say. And that's really what science is about. And that's really why the evolution unit is so much fun to teach, because it gives people a chance. And I have a lot of kids that will come back years later and say, I really started to learn how to think during your unit.
You're doing excellent there. So that was a good ending point there. Yes, we do have a question, and I didn't get a name with that question, but that's quite. We do appreciate your calls. Keep trying. Unfortunately, not going to be able to live on the air this morning. And the question is, if there's no God, where'd the Bible come from? Is that the question? That's a man-made instrument. That handed. That's, in my opinion. From what my own research and everything else, and we'll let you guys answer too, whatever. This was man's first attempt, really, to decide how the Earth was made and how and answers actually pretty basic scientific questions. And it became myth and legend that was carried down as to how we all came to be, and so but it wasn't put together until 4 AD is when it.
Well, which part, old or new, and
to the present day Bible that we have really didn't come to existence until 4 AD, wasn't it?
As far as the New Testament, most of it was decided by the churches, Catholic Church being the bigger ones. But they took much of the Old Testament, chopped some of it out, then took a whole bunch of books, and there were dozens of books, and discerned which ones they wanted to be in their New Testament. So it was basically put together by churches and other religious leaders. Now the Old Testament. But the question, though, being if there's no God, how come there's a Bible, was kind of silly, because the Bible comes from the same place that the Quran and the Torah and the Upanishads and the other books come from. Man, humans make these books. There's no more proof that a God exists, and it's proof that there are aliens on Mars. It has nothing to do with one or the other, and it's men can make books like that, as big as you want, as thick as you want, as complicated or as simple as you want. Never will a book made by man create a God or produce a God or prove that a God exists.
Also, I'd like to suggest to the caller to go ahead and read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is where the original flood story was found, that was lifted by the ancient Israelites and adopted as one of their own stories. So I would read the Epic of Gilgamesh, and actually I found the story to be more interesting in the Epic of Gilgamesh than in the Old Testament by far. So,
little side joke there. Sorry, folks. No, I totally lost the point. I was thinking of Voltaire's Bible. That's isn't that really the first main collection where it got together into our present form?
I'm not up on Voltaire and his writings, actually.
I'm not. But I was thinking.
I think it was in. I may be wrong here.
But that's
but I think
where I got the figure 4 AD.
Well, I think it was 323 AD when there's a council of.
I meant 4th century AD.
Yeah, I think that was it.
That's
right, 4th century.
Because they did decide a lot of the New Testament.
I didn't say it.
And basically, what they did was they took a vote on what was going to be in it and what was going to be excluded. So it was it was decided actually in basically a committee.
Can you vote upon sacred, holy, divine
Yes.
writings?
But
It was a
I'm
holy
thinking,
committee.
Guys.
that's pretty much
Right.
our present day Bible in that
right.
form there.
Right.
And
Right.
she wonders
How can we not believe in a higher being?
Okay, and that's Donna.
Dorian. Looks like Dorian.
Dorian.
Sorry.
Okay, Dorian.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, well, I believe in a higher being. It's the IRS. But, no, just kidding. There are lots of higher beings who are human, or organizations, or groups, or governments. But if you're talking about a supernatural, supreme, divine being talked about thousands of years, and by humans only, of course, made up by people and worshipped by people, then, you have to prove it better than that. Just people worshiping something does not prove that thing exists at all. And hasn't ever for thousands of years. People have been worshiping things like that, higher powers, if you will. I think mankind, humanity, is probably the highest, most intelligent creature that'll ever walk on Earth, and that it probably is best that way. Since we have the power now, we should probably make the best out of it, out of our use of power, and make things better on Earth as much as we can.
Also, I'd like to remind people out there in TV land that the burden of proof rests on the person making the claim. So if there's a claim that there's a higher being, then the person making that claim has the burden of proof. We don't have to prove there isn't one. If there's a higher being and really is one there, then that should become evident, and that proof can be made. If that proof could be made, then it's up to the person making the claim to make it, not us to disprove it. It's kind of a basic point of critical thinking, logical thinking there.
You said something earlier about the way you teach evolution in schools being, you want to try to make it an as calm and as accommodating atmosphere, a peaceful and happy atmosphere when talking about evolution, especially to people who have preconceived notions about creationism and evolution in schools and in general. And what I was going to say is that there was a commercial that I was reminded of for Scientology, where it opens with a scientist in his lab or classroom, and he's talking about how man supposedly came from apes. We're all animals, and that creation science or creationism is bogus, but he used a whole lot of emotion in that, and I think that's the problem with that whole concept of advertising and a person trying to teach evolution as being a very outraged, over-emotional person who doesn't have control over what he's saying and is so overly upset that somebody would doubt it, that he's got to tear his hair out and scream to the camera. And then they show the calm, rational religionist trying to tell you all about some kind of a higher source.
I see where you're going with it now, yes.
Well, that's the trick, I think.
This is in logical fallacies. This is called an ad hominem attack. Basically, you're attacking the character of the person making a statement, stating a position in an argument, rather than actually attacking the argument itself. So in that advertisement, that's what that would be. They're characterizing the scientist as being out of control, overly emotional, not in control of his own thoughts and words, and then they're trying to push that off as, well, see what evolution gets you, see? How crazy you'll become if you start thinking like that.
I would just like to ask them how many serious scientists they have seen act like that when talking about evolution. Or if you look on any of these serious science television shows, you'll see scientists being interviewed talking about serious science and not bunk science and not religion. They won't act like that. That's an exaggeration in the worst way. I think a scientist basically has to be a calm and rational person in order to do their job, and most of them are. That's just it.
The other thing that the kids have to learn to be able to understand the evolution unit is that there is no group of people called the scientists that all work in some monolithic organization where they all come up with the same thing and they say the same party line. And I think that a lot of their thinking comes from church, because that's how churches work. There's somebody in a position of authority that passes down whatever they think is true. And the Catholic Church is a prime example of that. Pope can on occasion make statements that are absolutely without questioning true, supposedly, and then everybody else is supposed to believe it. So the religious kids come from that perspective. And one of the things that's important to do is point out to them that scientists work in a free marketplace of ideas in competition with each other. And so if somebody was to find some alternate explanation for the diversity of life on the planet, and they had some good evidence to support their position, and this particular view, let's say, was not in line with the natural selection evolution view, hey, those people would be in great shape. They'd never have to work again because, they'd be able to publish their findings, and if in fact it was borne out by the evidence and borne out, they'd be in great shape.
Let's try to get this on. This camera angle may work.
There we go. Yeah.
How about that? Voicemail phone number 371-2911, and our website. Check it out.
Go ahead.
It's hard to see the dots. www.atheist-community.org. That's our website. Go ahead and check it out. We have a lot of things to look at. There are a couple of facts on there we were going to talk about. FAQs, right?
Frequently asked questions there.
Right.
Let me remind everybody, this is John Koontz. My name is Ray Blevins. My co-host is Joe Zamecki. There, he waved at you there. And, the number, there's the three of us. The number is 472-2255. We're having technical difficulties this morning. We do appreciate all your calls. We've seen several callers out there. And unfortunately, we won't be live on the air this morning because of the technical difficulties. But leave your questions with our call screener. They'll pass the questions out to you and out to us, and we will try to answer your questions there. I see several lights came up there as soon as I said that. I really appreciate that. We're going to discuss several of the frequently asked questions, but either on the web. I was thinking maybe on the evolution there. One that comes up often, and I hear it all the time, is about transitional species.
Transitional forms, right?
Transitional forms. And my understanding of that is we have thousands in museums right now, and it's just their definition of what a transitional form is.
That's right. What the creationists will do is they'll look at two fossils that scientists are saying, look, these are two transitional forms between these two major groups. And what they'll do is they'll define away the issue by saying, oh, well, no, this is a bird. For instance, the fossil Archaeopteryx, it's a very famous fossil.
Right.
It was found in the Solnhofen limestone in Bavaria, in Germany. And this particular animal looked like a reptile. In fact, that's what they were going to call it, some sort of dinosaur. And they looked at it more closely, they realized it had feathers. Right. And so there is a clear example of a transitional form. The animal had teeth, and birds don't have teeth. It had tailbone, and birds don't have tailbones. And yet it had feathers, and dinosaurs or reptiles don't have feathers.
Right.
And so clearly it's a transitional form. What the creationists will do is say, oh, well, it's just a bird, or it's just a dinosaur, thereby hopefully avoiding the whole obvious fact that it has characteristics of two major groups. And yes, in fact, there are a number of transitional forms found between the major groups of organisms that exist on the planet. And sure, there's going to be some, there's going to be some areas where we're not going to know every last detail. We'll never understand every detail there is to know about the history of life on the Earth. It's just not going to happen. But the big picture has been sketched in pretty thoroughly.
Well, my understanding, the rest of it, that genetics and the DNA is involved here. There might be a genetic change there that would actually be classified as a new species, but it ends up dying off.
Right.
And so we end up losing that strain, and and another transitional form's going on at the same time. Right. So once you start getting up to the level of man, there's so many branches involved.
That's right.
That it all depends on what you define as a transitional, and like you say, you can define that right out.
That's right.
That's what they try to do.
In fact, the Archaeopteryx, now there's some people that don't think Archaeopteryx was a direct ancestor to modern birds, but was in fact, like you said, a side branch that became extinct. And doesn't mean that birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs, although that's up for debate right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of debate on that. But when people hear that debate about birds evolving from dinosaurs, they have to understand that doesn't really mean that the scientists are disputing the fact of evolution. They're just disputing some of the details, which is healthy. We want to see that in science. Yes. We want to see constant debate and dissent. That's what makes it healthy, and that's how we know that it's on track.
Well, we did get another caller through there, Jennifer. We do appreciate your call. And her question was, were we raised religious or were we born atheists? And in my own circumstances here, and we'll go down the line here, I was actually baptized in the Methodist Church and grew up in the Methodist Church and went to it. They forced us every Sunday. I hated doing it. And so until I was like 15, and they felt I was old enough to make my own decision there, and I basically said I didn't want to go, and I had started having my doubts then. But I really didn't profess atheism here until last year. I always used the term agnostic, and once I got down here and started meeting other people, I realized I was atheist all along. I was just afraid to admit it, and so.
Is that a fair way to
yeah, it's a similar story. You're shaking your head there.
I was raised a Catholic, and I never really questioned it. Obviously, some of the Catholic doctrines, even when I was a kid, I realized were fairly absurd. The whole idea that one group of people was chosen by God to go to heaven at the expense of everybody else, I simply couldn't believe in that. Part of it, what it was I grew up in Europe, and I had a lot of friends who were Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Protestants, Catholics, and so it was very difficult for me to think that most of these guys were going to go to hell. And so I didn't realize it, but my thinking on religion changed. I didn't really know what I was, but my thinking was more along the lines of a deist, I think, for quite a long time. And then finally I decided I really need to get to the bottom of this and really figure out what's real, what's not. And when I started doing that and started learning to think clearly and question things, then I reached a point where I realized that there was no evidence for any God, and so I realized that in fact I was an atheist.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't laughing yet. We're getting messages here, and just to remind you again, callers, really technical difficulties. You're not being live on the air, so they're passing messages here to us as we go along here. Would you like to answer the question we were just discussing there?
Yeah, one part of the question I wanted to make clear also, were you born atheist? Well, I would like to say that everybody is. A religion has to be taught to a person.
Good point.
So everybody is born atheist. I was raised in a Roman Catholic home and went to Roman Catholic private schools for 9 years. Went to church twice a week for 9 years, and from early on, it was kind of absurd to me, although I was indoctrinated fully and did all the sacraments I could have, and went through all the religion class every day, an hour of religion class every day for 9 years, and in addition, all kinds of prayers and readings and all the rituals. And about the 7th grade, we had a physical science class, and started to question things, because the question now in science became finding reality. And there was a certain specific series of steps that you go through to find out the fact and the truth of a question, the scientific experimental method. And I found that religion didn't stand up to it at all. Years of indoctrination were shattered when I was asked to remember that a fact is only a fact if you can prove it to be a fact, and if it's not, then your theory remains a theory, and science doesn't care what you feel about that, or what your emotions are, and what kind of biases you have. And from 7th till 8th grade, and when I graduated, I was an atheist in a Catholic school, and it was compounding, and it was rather disgusting at times, because they have so many rituals.
But it brings us circle back to the actual reason for the formation of the group is once you admit you're an atheist and get out there and there's no social events for the atheists. There's no place where you can actually gather and talk without being afraid to mention it, because there is some persecution for the atheists, because this is such a dominated society by the Christian right, religious right, just to put a term to it there, and they're so well organized. I've heard figures of multi-million-dollar budgets that they have, that they're out there lobbying our congressmen and everything else and getting things done. We like to try to organize. We're a small group. Joe here is actually a member of American Atheists, which is a national group. You feel free to mention the meeting coming up there that you're...
Oh yeah, we're having a convention, our 24th National Convention in Washington, D.C., June 12 through 14 of 1998. It's going to be a great atheist situation with a convention and speeches and lectures, workshops, bookstore, and we're going to go sightseeing and meet with some people and find a bunch of atheists in Washington, because there's a lot there. Last year we were there in October and had a great time. And This time, yes. Check out the information about it, our website, www.atheists.org. That's American Atheists. Thanks for the plug, and now back to ACA.
And like I said, we're not affiliated with American Atheists, but we both support each other. And like I say, Joe's a member of both groups, and we definitely support everything that they do, and we try to help each other out the best we can on that. So speaking of other, the group likes to have
How can we find hope?
social events and everything else. One that we're having, I remind everybody, my birthday party tonight at Steamboats. Reckless Kelly is playing.
Yes.
It's free. Come on down. Just say you're an atheist, you get in the door free. There's no cover.
What a deal.
Yes. Actually, just say you heard it on the show. If you really don't want to admit you're in it, we'll let the Christians in too.
Come on, now say it. That's what I say. Get out there and tell somebody, you know.
These guys are really great rock and roll band. You'll like them a lot. And like I said, it's Reckless Kelly, in case you're familiar with them.
Your birthday? How old are you?
Oh,
I'm sorry. You don't have to answer that.
That's all right.
Not on TV.
Big 4-0. That's the reason we're doing a big blowout. Yes.
Party now.
Yes. Yes. Party while you still can. Yes. Okay. Add a little. Just let you know that we're real human. We were in the AIDS walk this year. We try to organize and do good things. We're going to be doing a blood drive here.
Blood drive? What day is that?
We're doing it around Easter time. I didn't know.
It's after
April
the first. It's sometime around the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox.
Yes.
Of course.
No nails necessary.
No nails. No nails. We'll use modern equipment.
So yes,
I think we're still working on the details of the blood drive.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get a date soon. Put it on the website.
Right.
But the whole point is, you don't need the guys of the church to do good deeds here in the city and nation and everything else. We try to educate our members on the issues, and we all vote. We try, let our council members know that we're out there, and all the way up to our legislators in Congress and everything else. That's the only way you can get it. We're trying to change the system within, and keep church and government separate. And that reminds me, we did have a question way back when about government and religion.
I think we did.
Maybe we have a different question, though.
Yeah, but let's see what
a bereaved person who explains spiritual feelings.
okay.
Emotion.
Okay, the caller's name was Mike, and we do appreciate your call. It says, if no God, how can we comfort a bereaved person or explain spiritual feelings such as music, art, or etc.?
Without religion.
Did a great job there.
Without religion. Thanks, man.
Paraphrasing into one little short whiteboard there. And, go ahead, Joe.
Well, there's a whole lot of great things that can be done without religion being involved at all. Bereaving a sick relative or friend, making music, art, doing beautiful things, helping out those who are less fortunate, visiting a sick friend. None of those things require religion. I find it amazing that people continue to think that because atheists don't have religion, they can't do those things, and that therefore must be emotionless, automatons, people who don't really care much about society or just overly depressed people. I like to say, first off, I'm having a great time with life.
Yes.
And we have a community of friends here. We help each other out when there are problems. And we've been together a couple of years. It's still kind of new.
Yes.
But as far as a group of friends who you can come and talk to, especially about problems with religion that many religionists don't want to hear about, or problems in other areas that, religionists might have a problem with because it deals with reality. And, you can come and talk to your atheist friends in the atheist community of Austin.
Also, I'd like to add something about that. Human beings are social primates, along with chimpanzees and bonobos and gorillas. And you can see in chimpanzee societies, you can see a lot of the same emotional things that we see in humans. So the idea of comforting somebody who's sick, comforting somebody who's had somebody die in their family, that's not something that's even confined to this species. Mm-hmm. And so, unless, of course, there's somebody who would like to claim that chimpanzees are also Christians, that makes it pretty absurd to think that, no insult to the chimpanzees watching.
Here go the phones. Here go the phones.
But the phone's good. They're going to light up here now. We go. All right, we got some calls. We don't have much time. We got some calls coming in now. But those are just primate behaviors, and that's the normal part. We're a social primate where we've evolved to live in social groups and depend upon each other for the simple reason that none of us would be able to make it in the natural world on our own any more than a chimp could. And so we depend upon these things, and natural selection has, over millions of years, has selected for those of us, of our ancestors, who were best adapted to living in social groups. Mm-hmm. And so that answers a lot of the questions about where our emotional things come from. So yes, atheists are not emotionless automatons, but we just separate that from, fantasy.
And then you can also see where morality came through the evolutionary process.
That's right.
If you're accepted in the group, then your genes are going to be propagated on. Where back then they didn't, way before we had judges and lawyers, whatever. If you did anything to offend the herd or the tribe or whatever,
right.
You were shunned from there. So your genes were no longer part of the group.
That's exactly right.
So it, And morality, you don't need religion for morality. It comes natural.
And the fact that there's so many different religions out there that are mutually exclusive,
yes.
that are fully functioning societies that have people that learn to cooperate with each other, show that there's none of them that could be real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question.
Ricky wants to know our views on homosexuality, seeing how it, the religious and the Bible and everything else, things abomination, to use his word or Don's word or somebody's word. But we're an open group to any individual, race, sexual orientation. We actually have several gay people in the group. Like I said, we're quite open to as long as you're in there trying to contribute to the group and society as a whole, we'd be glad to have you in the group there. And,
exactly right.
Anybody who wants to can come on down and check it out themselves.
What people do on their own is their own business, and I don't think there's anybody in our group that would argue with that. That's entirely a personal issue, whether or not you're homosexual. And for us, what the Bible says about it is fairly meaningless.
Yes.
We don't. I know it's hard sometimes for Christians to accept that we really don't go by what the Bible says. It really has very little impact on our life. It's a book that's not about us, not for us. That's not where we get our direction from.
Oh, well, another kind of person that the Bible feels is an abomination by their very existence are us, atheists.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a couple of parts in the Bible which specifically say you cannot be one of us and get into heaven, or in some cultures even survive the day. But I feel those are just more reasons to put the Bible down and not mess with it. To each his own, I say. I mean, we can't speak for all atheists, but in the atheist community of Austin, it's just generally accepted that, sexual orientation is just not an issue. You are what you are, be what you are, be honest. That's what I think. And to each his own.
Yeah, like I said, as long as you feel like you have something to contribute to society or the group or anything like that, you're doing fine. Because there's a lot of people out there that are willing to just sit there and do nothing. Just let the world go by, let life go by.
I think everybody has a potential to contribute and make the world a little bit better in their own way. And I really think that calling someone an abomination or their activity, as far as gays and lesbians are concerned, it really is a waste, because there's so many good people out there who are being called evil over this when they really are, honest, productive citizens. I think everybody can do something good in the world, and an attitude that the Bible espouses about that, just because someone's different, is a horrible, wasteful way to go.
That's an interesting question. Todd asked if the church-state separation was originally meant to keep government out of church. That's one way of looking at it. You have an answer, John?
I do. What happened was at the end of the American Revolution, the American colonies were awfully disorganized and were awfully weak. The British were not really entirely willing to give up their colonies in the New World, and they still had their forces up in Canada. And I think they would have been quite willing to sweep down and take back the American colonies, which were awfully lucrative for them. And the various colonies, of course, had different religious factions and groups. What brought the country together as a country was being able to put aside the differences that people had, so that if you lived in the colony of Maryland and you were a Catholic, you would be able to work with somebody who is a Baptist someplace else, or some other faction of Christianity. And so it was important for the Founding Fathers to find a way that they could find some common ground. The way they did that was they created a secular nation to where it doesn't really matter what religion you have or non-religion. What matters is that you're working for the common good, and that you're elected and all these things. So no, the separation of state and church, I don't think is intended to keep the state out of church. It's intended to keep the church out of the government, so that all the people in the country could find some common ground to solve their problems together, and then on their own time they could go ahead and go to church or not go to church, or whatever they wanted to do on their own, but that was their own business. And I think if you read the writings of the Founding Fathers, it's Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, it becomes very clear in there that their views were very open to a lot of diversity of opinion, but that religion was going to be kept out of the workings of the government.
And I don't know of any right offhand, and if the caller knows of any of the Founding Fathers or anybody else that wrote about the concerns of government in the church, I don't know of any right offhand. But feel free to call our voicemail number, 371. Go ahead, John.
Let's see if I can get this read. Well, let's switch to other camera. Way it was working there. We go. Beautiful.
That's good.
371-2911 is our voicemail, and you feel free to call and leave any comments, information like that. We'd like to know, because like I said, I don't know of any of most of the research that we've had on that indicates, that they were trying to keep the church out of the government, religion itself, not just the church, but religion itself out of the government.
I'd like to add that I've found all of those documents on the internet. If you have access to the internet and you're interested in what the Founding Fathers had to say, it's a click of a few buttons, and you'll search around, and you'll be able to find the actual words of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and the other Founding Fathers, and the important documents that set up the country. And it's very hard to read that and imagine how anybody could come away from that with the idea that this is supposed to be a Christian nation, or that somehow this is supposed to be a religious society. It's simply not in the documents.
Last minute comment.
Yeah, there were a lot of varied opinions among the Founding Fathers at the time. There's a myth, a false idea, or notion that all the Founding Fathers were unanimous in their Christianity or in their attitudes on several different things, but it's obvious when you go back and read what they wrote, and the Constitution itself, it's obviously reflecting varied opinions from all the Founding Fathers. You didn't just have Christians. But you did have the memory in Europe of how religion dominating government class structure and government situations that they wanted to stay away from. Keep the religion power out of government. And yes, also keep some of the government's force out of the church and give some religious freedom. But it's definitely a wall and not a one-way flowing wall. I don't know of any wall that allows something through. By definition, it's going to keep anything out on both sides. So the best ideal, according to that, would be keeping the power of religion out of the power of government, and vice versa. But both, not one or the other.
We had another caller, Amy, and her question was about witchcraft and the occult. And basically that's a pretty easy question to answer. That goes into the supernatural. And we don't believe in anything in the supernatural. There is what was, last century's magic is this century's science, and so it's just yet to be figured out. If they're doing something that we don't know, we will figure it out eventually. And I don't know of any occult that's really doing any magic that's not some kind of science. That
most of the witchcraft and occult practices actually predate Christianity, and it's just another religion, and it's not something that we follow or take part in at all. There's a lot of misunderstanding about that, and that's a common question. And I hear this from kids at school. Well, if I'm an atheist, do I put spells on people? No, I do not. We do not do that. We have nothing to do with the occult, witchcraft, or religion of any kind. All witchcraft is another variety of religion that we have nothing to do with.
And it comes up a lot. And when you think about the logic of the question, if you don't believe in God, you're surely not going to believe in the devil. And you say you're an atheist, they automatically assume Satanism. I hear that so many times. I was like, stop and think. hey, if I don't believe in a God, I sure am not going to believe in a devil. So we're going to start winding down here. It's getting towards the end of the hour. We've had some great callers. Really appreciate that. Just remind everybody, John Koontz will be discussing more on evolution and some of the concepts that he... oh, wait a minute. We do have one more question.
Oh.
Joe asked what happens after death. Your body decomposes and
True.
And the world keeps going. The universe keeps going on without you. And unfortunately, that's the way. So you need to make the best use of your time, the limited time you have here on this earth, to either, make yourself a better place and make a better place for the people that you care about. And we care about Austin and America, and we're great American citizens. We're proud to be Americans, and we try, So, but again, like I said, we meet every Sunday. This is our webpage. If you'd like to know more about our social events and anything that we got going, like I said, we did have our lecture series March 1st. Will be John Koontz discussing all the different points, and bring in your questions. You're free to, right?
Absolutely.
You're glad to take any questions that they have out there.
If you're an atheist out there and you'd like to help contribute to our frequently asked question thing that we're working on right now, if you'll get onto our website and leave us some, or get onto our email list, we'd be happy to have you and get your opinions. We're trying to represent as many different opinions within the atheist community as possible on answering some of the questions. So we would definitely be open to that.
And I don't think I said it was Sunday at 10:30. Right after we leave here, we're going down there to the
our meetings?
Yeah, Hot Jumbo Bakery.
Right. Every Sunday meeting. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, we got one.
Another one. Same thing.
Witchcraft.
Occult.
We've already answered that one.
All religions.
We don't
It
do
was a different caller, so we don't mind.
That's right.
Because we're coming up here to the closing here. Like I say, my name is Ray Blevins. My co-host, Joe Zamecki. This week's guest was John Koontz. Excellent show. I really appreciate you coming out this morning.
Thanks for having me.
We do appreciate all the callers. And we got...
We're here every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m.
Yes.
Channel 16.
Channel 16. And we hope you call in again soon. Yeah.
Thank you.